Greetings and salutations, my friend. Today we're gonna talk about Elon Musk. Elon. Why is it that whenever I think of Elon Musk, I think of a fish? Might be because his name sounds a bit like an eel. Elon on an eel. This year, Elon Musk has been a figure of controversy. Back in 2023, I made a video on why I think that conservatives and proponents of freedom of speech should not be trusting Elon Musk. I remain very skeptical of Elon Musk and his intentions, and his affiliation with nationalist parties in Europe has been rather worrisome, if you ask me. Still, despite all of this, I find Elon Musk to be a fascinating person, an interesting person. If ever, for some reason, somehow, I would find myself across the table from him, I think we might have an interesting conversation, really. And actually, one of the most interesting conversations with Elon Musk that I have seen has been on Lex Fridman's podcast. More specifically, Elon's take on war. I'll show you individual clips from that video and offer my own take on each of them, and maybe even offer some criticism or perhaps approval.
To what degree do you think war is part of human nature versus a consequence of how human societies are structured? I ask this as you have somehow controversially been a proponent of peace.
I'm generally a proponent of peace. I mean, ignorance is perhaps, in my view, the real enemy to be countered. That's the real hard part, not, fighting other humans. But all creatures fight. I mean, the jungle is you look at people think of this nature as perhaps some sort of peaceful thing, but in fact it is not. There's some quite funny Werner Herzog thing where he's like in the jungle, like saying that it's like basically just murder and death in every direction. I mean, the plants and animals in the jungle are constantly trying to kill and eat each other every single day, every minute. So it's not like, we're unusual.
So what Elon Musk says here about human nature is quite interesting because, I see that a lot of people have this very romanticized idea of what nature is. Nature is so peaceful, beautiful, we need to be more in touch with nature. But oh my god, like, nature is brutal. Nature is fucking brutal, man. It's like zero mercy. A lot of predators out there, they have zero mercy. They just see you as food, and that's it. And it's beyond their control too, It's not like they're entirely at fault. They were born like this, and they really have no say in that. They are not capable of perceiving living beings that they see as prey as anything other than prey. It doesn't exist within the frames of their brains. I find it interesting that I live in a society where from very early childhood I have been watching a lot of nature documentaries. If some predators killing other animals, cheetah killing zebras, antelopes, there's crocodiles in the Nile, and it's brutal, and I've been exposed to that from very early childhood. And at the same time, I've also lived in a society that constantly kept telling me how people are the most violent animals out there, and that the nature in and of itself, all of that is beautiful and peaceful. And seeing those two things that I have been fed from very early childhood, quite a big contrast there, yeah? Regarding the very question that Lex asked Elon, whether war is more of a result of human nature, or rather how the societies are structured. As an anarchist, a lot of the time I say, people say or oppose anarchism because they believe that the government will protect them from violence. Yet, the greatest acts of violence ever committed, although the word greatest doesn't really feel right, does it? All those biggest ever acts of violence have been committed by governments, right? And yet, people think that governments somehow protect them from violence when they cause this much violence. And you know, I'm thinking, is anarchism sort of a solution to have there would be no violence, no war? And you know, even as an anarchist, I don't think so. I don't think so. War, violence is in human nature, and the governments are result of that human nature, combined with a very important element of human nature, and that is the thirst for power, combined with that inclination towards violence. So I think in order for anarchist societies to truly thrive, we would have to change the basic components of human nature, amplify the elements of human nature that promote kindness, empathy, sharing, and all of that, and get rid of those elements of our nature that make us prone to violence and conflict. I also think that in a functional anarchist society, it is essential to increase the overall intelligence of average people in order for it to function. You know, because we need people responsible people, rather than people who would believe that the government will take responsibility for them. And for that, you need a sufficient level of intelligence and independency, which are elements that already exist in our nature. I believe they can be amplified through gene technology.
Yeah. Well, war, it's safe to say wars always existed and always will exist.
Always will exist.
Always has existed and always will exist.
I hope not. You think it always will?
There will always be war. It's a question of just how much war, and you know what, you know, there's this sort of the scope and scale of war, but to imagine that there would not be any war in the future, I think would be a very unlikely outcome.
Yeah, you talked about the culture series. There's war even there.
Yes. There's a giant war. The first book starts off with a gigantic galactic war where trillions die. Trillions.
But it still nevertheless protects these pockets of flourishing. Somehow you can have galactic war and still have pockets of flourishing.
Yeah, I mean, it's. I guess if we are able to one day expand to, you know, fill the galaxy or whatever, there will be a galactic war at some point.
The scale. I mean, the scale of war has been increasing. It's like a race between the scale of suffering and the scale of flourishing.
Yes.
Do I agree with Elon Musk's statement that there will always be war? You know, I think back to my childhood when my mom was watching a film, and I was just sitting there doing something, minding my own business. You know, when a film is on the telly, you sort of, you know, as a kid, it catches your attention, and you sort of watch it. I met this female FBI agent who was playing the role of a like Miss America, something like. What is that thing where you have those competitions in beauty, things like that? But she was actually an FBI agent, and you know, all those participants there, like, I wish for world peace. I don't know why that particular scene stuck with me, you know, but it's a sort of a cliche thing, you know. It's like the thing you're supposed to mean, right? You're supposed to be a pacifist. You're supposed to want world peace. You know, with time, I grew very disillusioned that that can never be achieved. If that was the case, we would have achieved that a long time ago, but human nature is what it is. The question is, however, is it possible to end all wars with more non-conventional means? So I don't think it is possible to create even society, let alone a whole planet, without war, through means that are purely political and social. It has been tried many times. And sure, you can end a specific war through those means. And you might even achieve a temporary peace. But this kind of temporary peace doesn't really last very long. And we have seen it, because there will come the time for another war. And I believe that history is circular in many ways. And that we will continue making the same mistakes. Largely because when you get a new generation of people, starting from scratch, it's sort of like John Locke's tabula rasa, except you have some foundation left by previous generations. We don't start completely empty. From the very early childhood, from the moment we learn to recognize things, we are being fed the very structures of the society we are living in. So that tabula rasa gets filled up very quickly, but it's only the very basis of that, because when a person dies, all their knowledge, all their experience, all their wisdom, it collapses, crushes. What we are left with is the foundation. The next generation is picking out the pieces, trying to do something with them, but it's a never-ending process of always going back to the start. And you see people today, right? Well, we have very few people alive today who have lived through World War II. And I wish there were more. I wish they didn't have to die. Because I think our society needs them right now and needs those voices. So, but because you have young people today who do not have that experience, people who are going to be committing those exact same mistakes, falling for those same old traps. So if it is only possible to achieve temporary peace through socio-political means, what other means are there that can achieve eternal peace or lasting peace? Well, I think if there was no existence whatsoever, there would definitely be lasting peace. So in a way, it is more ethically correct to just kill everyone than it is to kill one group of people. That's a bit of a joke, although there's some truth to that too, yeah? I think that peace can only be achieved through transhumanist means. What I was talking earlier about upgrading human nature, taking control over our own evolution, getting rid of this romanticized idealistic idea that which is natural is good. A lot of good things we have created is because we were trying to overcome our nature. And actually what we are overcoming and what we are becoming is not necessarily unnatural. People have this strange idea of what is unnatural. I think that everything that lies within the potential of a certain species is what is natural to them. So technically things like programming, space travel, they are as natural to us today, to the people who are living in the future, and to the people who have lived 2,000 years ago. Only those people had no means to realize that potential, but it is not any less natural to them. And I think this is the only way to achieve long-term peace, to upgrade ourselves technologically to the point where we are, as a species as a whole, capable of resolving conflicts in a more civilized way, rather than using the ape brain. However, I also see the cons to that, because how do you go about it? How do you achieve it? technically, you know, everyone on this planet would have to upgrade themselves. No exceptions, right? Because if you have just one group of people who will not go through that, and they will retain their violent nature. And I think people unwilling to go through that will possibly, even maybe very likely, like violent solutions. You know, think groups like terrorist organizations, things like that. So now imagine, let's say here in the West, right, we upgrade ourselves technologically to the point where we are just very peaceful hippies. All of that. Yeah, we're basically all bonobo apes. That makes us very, very vulnerable, because now you have other people who still retain their old human nature. Well, they will see you as a very, very easy target. We would be eradicated, no question. And even if we all, as a species, all human beings, underwent that process, that change, let's speak hypothetically of future space travel, and if we possibly encounter different intelligent species in the world, or in the universe. Let's say some of them are even like warlord species, hypothetically speaking. Another reason to suspect that we would be eradicated if we went into space thinking we will be spreading love and peace. Well, we will very quickly find ourselves in situations where that ideology would crash with the reality of the life out there. You know, I watched Alien, so I know that love and peace will do nothing against xenomorphs. Unless you qualify getting impregnated through your mouth as an act of love. I guess some people would. It's really a matter of definition and perspective, I suppose.
The loss of the flower of Ukrainian and Russian youth, and we should have some sympathy for the Russian boys as well as the Ukrainian boys, because the Russian boys didn't ask to be on their front line; they have to be. So, there's a lot of sons not coming back to their parents, you know, and I think most of them don't really they don't hate the other side. You know, it's sort of like, there's this saying about, like this saying comes from World War I. It's like young boys who don't know each other killing each other on behalf of old men that do know each other. What the hell's the point of that?
This, you know, I think no matter what your opinion on Elon Musk is, I think most of us will agree on that. You know, if you hate Elon Musk so much that you think you should disagree with him on everything, absolutely everything, and you disagree on that, get a reality check, really. He talks sense here. And this is something I have been thinking about since, well, I don't know, since I was maybe 12, 13, something like that. And it was always something that was very obvious to me, and I think it already pointed me in this anarchist direction, you know. What I talked about earlier, you know, governments are the cause of most violence, and that violence is not even committed directly by them, but other people are being either coerced, forced, or manipulated into committing those acts of violence on behalf of governments.
Yeah.
The thing that seems like utopia could be a dystopia after all.
Yeah, and actually I was talking to a friend of mine saying, like, would you really want there to be no hate in the world? Like, really none? Like, I wonder why hate evolved. I'm not saying we should amplify hate, of course. I think we should try to minimize it, but none at all? There might be a reason for hate.
And suffering. I mean, it's really complicated. to consider that some amount of human suffering is necessary for human flourishing?
Is it possible to appreciate the highs without knowing the lows?
I think there's a lot of people who would be inclined to disagree with Musk here completely. You know, hate a good thing, needed? Well, maybe. I don't know. You know, I think in most cases, hate, sure, it's a natural feeling. I think in a lot of cases we should learn to control it, even overcome it. But then, are there things that we should hate? I think so. Stuff like abuse of kids, especially that of sexual nature, but also other kinds of abuse. Hell yeah, I think we should definitely hate that. I think we should hate rape. I think that we should hate war. There are so many acts of violence, you know, we should hate. You know, I was just recently watching videos of cartels. You know what kind of videos I'm talking about. The kind of stuff I'm not going to show here on YouTube, but I think every once in a while it's a good reminder of just what humans are capable of. You know, and I watch these kinds of videos and I feel intense sadness for the victims, but I also feel intense hate for people committing those crimes. And is my hate justified? Perhaps, but then again, if hate is the source of violence and war, and I don't think it's the only source of it. I think there are many sources. You know, I think a lot of the time violence and war doesn't really happen out of hate. Sometimes it just happens out of impulse in daily situations. You know, bar fights, they often happen out of impulse rather than hate. Wars a lot of the time happen out of greed and power rather than hate, although that too happens. It's one of the components, right? But if there are some things we should hate and we don't eliminate that hate, will it also ruin the whole plan of changing human nature for there to be no violence and no war? That's a good question, right? Because in order for there to be no hate, everything in the world would have to be good, and I don't think that is achievable in any way, sense or form. We can change ourselves, but we cannot change the basics of reality. We can evolve beyond that, and you know, maybe at some point with that the universe would evolve too. But there would be a very, very long transformational stage where the two would exist, you know, and then you have the people who love absolutely everything, and then there are things outside of them that are not deserving of that love at all. And well, we lack the capability of hating that kind of evil. And just to say, thought experiment, let's say we think everything is good and we love everything. Would we be actually committing acts of violence and actually loving it, thinking it is good? Not committing it out of hate or the need for violence, but rather just believing we are doing something good. This sounds very dystopian, right? But let's think about it. Well, it's actually within the realms of possibility, this kind of naivety. And I don't think the goal of any type of progress is to make naive people, but rather people who are able to perceive complexities and nuances.
You want to be careful of one of those things where you wish for something that sounds good, but if you get it, it's actually a dystopian situation. So, you know, you could sort of run a hypothesis of like, if you wish for world peace, sounds good, but how is it enforced? At what cost? Eternal peace. it might actually be worse to have eternal peace because of what that would entail. It might be the suppression of progress. It might be an ossified society that never changes. What I'm saying is that there is an argument that if you wish for no war, you should be careful what you wish for. Because what's required in order for there to be no war might be worse than a little war.
That, I think, is probably the highlight of everything Elon ever said. And honestly, I'm going to say this is not an easy thing to comment on, because I partially disagree with Elon, but partially I also think he's right, and it's not something you want to admit, you know, because it's a dark thing to admit that we need war. You know, I think we should also toy with the possibility that, well, he might be right. But let me start with what I disagree on. First of all, what he said about there being no war as something that could stunt or stop progress. There are many reasons to suspect that that is not entirely true. I think Musk is wrong on that completely. I mean, sure, I don't think he talks about it in like an absolutist term, that there will be no progress with war. He entertains it rather as a possibility of what could happen. So that makes it even harder to make a proper response to that, because he's an intelligent man. Whatever you think of Musk, he's an intelligent man. He doesn't think of it in an absolutist terms. And so I do not want to approach it in absolutist terms either. Besides, I very rarely talk about things in absolutist terms on this channel anyway. I think that progress can definitely happen without there being a war. I mean, sure, you know, there's a lot of technological progress that has happened as a result of wars. You know, World War I and II, so a huge boom of war machines. And that, well, let's say that technological development also contributed in other fields later on. Sure, I'll give it that. Even, you know, acts of diplomacy, art of diplomacy, is also learned from war. You need war to learn diplomacy. So we learn how to handle conflict because there is conflict. Logically, this implies that, well, that conflict is needed in order for there to be progress, to learn how to handle that. But as for the progress of human species, both sociological and technological, I think it would happen without war. There are many reasons to suspect that, really, because we also progress and we develop in times of peace, and it's because, you know, even in a world where there is no war, and if we through transhumanist means would produce the kind of society where war doesn't exist, we would still be developing and progressing further because we would still be struggling. There would still be struggle. And just a few days ago, I recorded another video in which I was talking about how life is a struggle. That it is essential to understand life as a struggle. And that everything other than life also struggles. Matter, energy, everything that is animate and inanimate, it all struggles. The motion, the change in the universe, it's all a struggle. We're consciously aware that we are struggling. That's the only difference between this type of conscious life that we are and a life that is not so very conscious or inanimate objects. To that, I wish to add that, you know, one of the basic laws of thermodynamics is that in order for any kind of system to gain access to energy, it also has to spend energy, right? And this is the basics of the very laws of thermodynamics in the universe. And a lot of the time when we think of those laws of physics, we sort of separate our own lives from it. Like, oh, this is what happens in the world of physics, this is what happens in nature, this is what happens in space, stuff of energy. We think of it as so foreign and distant, but we're so wrong. We're so wrong about it. And I think this boils down to how we like to think of ourselves as a species, as a society, as something that is separate from nature. Honestly, it is one of the biggest fallacies ever committed by mankind, to think that we are somehow different and separate from nature. You know, I've just been thinking about my history teacher in the 4th grade, and it was the first time we had history classes. So she said that there is culture and there is nature. Culture is that which concerns itself with the activity of humans. Nature is that which concerns itself with the activity of everything in nature except for humans. And there you see it's this clear separation of us from the nature, right? Like, and she said that history concerns itself with culture, not nature. And I disagreed with that completely. I had a problem with that already back then. Like, are we really separate from nature? Are we like something different? Is history not about nature? And, you know, because she was a bit of a dick, of course she didn't like me saying things like that. She was a teacher, she knew better, right? I was just a stupid kid, what do I know? But anyway, I think it is wrong to think that we somehow, as a species or as a society, especially as a society, are somehow separate from nature. Because by saying that we are something separate from nature, we are also implying that those laws of physics, laws of thermodynamics, don't apply to things like politics, sociology, and all of that. No, those are actually fields of natural science. Natural science concerns itself with sociology and politics as much as it concerns itself with physics and chemistry and biology, to be honest. Think about it, how our society operates, right? Well, if you think of this basic law of thermodynamics that you need to exchange or spend energy in order to obtain energy, that applies to human societies too. In order for individuals or for communities or for the whole societies to gain access to food, you have to work, right? And even in today's society, it translates to that, right? You have to work in order to obtain money so you can buy food. Even if you don't have to work, you still have to spend energy to obtain energy. You have to go to the store to buy food. And let's say if you don't have to, if you live at home with your parents or you have a servant who prepares food for you, you probably still have to get your ass off that couch or bed, go to the kitchen. You're still spending energy. And even if you don't have to, you still have to chew your food. You still have to spend energy. Even if you're not chewing your food, if you're receiving it through IV or anything, your body is still spending energy on digesting and processing all that food. Anyway, you can't obtain energy without spending energy. This is the very basis for why life is a struggle. I think there are certain struggles that we can do without, right? I think there's suffering in the world we can do without, and war is one of those things. I think war and hunger are two things we should absolutely work to eliminate, not through political means, but through transhumanist means, in order to achieve long-term effects of that, rather than something temporary or something that doesn't work at all. And even when we achieve the type of society where there is no war and hunger, this is not an idyllic utopian society. I don't believe in utopias. I said it on several occasions. You know, there will still be struggles, there will still be challenges. You know, we challenge ourselves in every single day in so many ways, you know, scientific, social, philosophical progress, technological progress. All of it will happen without wars. If anything, stuff like war would more likely interrupt that process, and stuff like hunger would actually prohibit many people from creating progress because, well, they need food. People who have no education and can't possibly contribute, who would otherwise, who have the potential within them. Many of those issues can be solved, and we can achieve actually more progress from that. And all those people who have those kinds of struggles, we actually exchange them for different type of struggles that work more towards the progress. I think a lot of progress that happens in the field of science, technology, philosophy, and so on happens as a result of both competition and cooperation. And this applies to the world of politics as much as it applies to the world of science and technology. Towards the end of the 19th century, Leo Tolstoy wrote a book called The Kingdom of God is Within You. Tolstoy was a Christian anarchist I find really fascinating, and this is a book I would recommend to both people who are interested in anarchism as well as people who are interested in Christianity or are Christians. Tolstoy was an interesting fellow for sure, and Christian anarchism is also something I have been having quite an interest in myself, although I don't consider myself a Christian. But I also think that Tolstoy could be classified as an individualist anarchist, because Tolstoy believed in individual responsibility, individual growth, individual morality, individual moral growth. He opposed war altogether, right? Like Tolstoy was a pacifist through and through. He also thought that war stands in the way of progress. I think overall, you know, the more individuals we have who will contribute to both moral and scientific development, the more it will also affect the society as a whole and its own scientific, philosophical, technological, and moral growth. Now that I have offered my take on why I don't think war is necessary for progress, let's take a look at something else. Elon said that if you wish for peace, be careful what you wish for, because it might actually be worse than war itself. You know, this actually makes me think, because I think Elon actually offers something that criticizes my own worldview, namely that peace can be achieved through technological transhumanist means. And what I said early about it being something that basically the entirety of human species has to undergo in order to achieve that. And I'm asking myself sometimes, is it an authoritarian method? And you know, the answer to that is it's very authoritarian. And I consider myself a very anti-authoritarian person as an anarchist, right? But I also see that the only means of achieving the anarchist world with no unfair hierarchies, with no unfair bodies of power that control people and abuse people. It's a beautiful dream, right? I think it's a noble goal, but the method of achieving that is actually very, very authoritarian. I'm almost a walking contradiction like that, right? Because I think that in order to get rid of authoritarianism or totalitarianism, we would have to commit an absolute totalitarian act. It's a puzzle in and of itself, how we go about it, right? And then there's another puzzle, is that I believe that in order for us to achieve an anarchist society, we need transhumanism. But I also think that we need anarchism in order for transhumanism to work. So the technology doesn't fall only in the hands of the most powerful, most rich, and also that it doesn't get abused by those bodies of power, such as governments, private corporations, and so on. So it's a difficult puzzle, and actually one of the books I want to write in the future. I already wrote one, editing it, which probably publish it in next year. But one of the books I want to publish in the future after that one will be focused specifically on that puzzle of anarchism and transhumanism and totalitarianism. But I do not wish to go more in depth on that right now. In that sense, sometimes my own view reminds me of an idea that was presented in a video game called Assassin's Creed. The very first one that was released in, I believe, 2008, 2007 or 8, so something like that. Which there's this corporation in modern days called Abstergo. They're basically descendants of Templars, like a continuation of the Templar ideology, which in this game represents sort of a fictive narrative around their ideology. But it's a very interesting ideological take, you know, because on one hand, in this game series, you have assassins who believe that peace can be achieved through free will, and Templars or Abstergo, who believe that peace should be achieved through force. And as an anarchist, well, I would like to say I'm more aligned with the assassin ideology, but I realize sometimes that my own ideas of the most effective method of achieving an anarchist society are actually more aligned with Templars, because in the first Assassin's Creed game, Warren Vidic, who works for Abstergo, he has like an important position in that organization. He wants to use an ancient artifact left by species that existed before humans, right? He had those powerful artifacts, and he wants to use it to actually control people, take away their free will in order to achieve peace.
To use a rather tired analogy, corruption is no different than cancer. Cut out the tumors, but fail to treat the source and, well, you're buying time at best. There's no true change to be had without comprehensive, systemic intervention.
Chemo for the masses.
Education, re-education, to be more precise. But it's not easy, and it doesn't always take.
Let me guess. You've got a better solution. What is it then?
Now that would be telling. The world's a mess. It's pathetic, really. You've seen it firsthand yourself. 1,000 years between you and your ancestor, and society remains just as barbaric, just as stupid.
And your point is?
Order, Mr. Miles. The world needs order. That is what we're working towards, and that is what you're helping us to achieve.
You expect me to believe you're building a better tomorrow?
That's exactly what we're doing. The human race calls out for direction. They want to know why they're here, what they're meant to do. Well, we're going to tell them. And once they understand how to live their lives, everything will be better.
Better how?
An end to all conflicts, large and small. Isn't that what you assassins strive for? Peace in all things?
And again, wanting to achieve peace, noble goal, right? But method of it, super authoritarian, right? And at no point do I think that a transhumanist or an anarchist society should have no free will. Quite the opposite. I'm a proponent of as much freedom as possible. But can it be achieved? This type of technological progress, technological advancement, and enhancing of human individuals, in order for that to happen on a grand scale, to actually have an effect, can it be happen without some authoritarian means? Anyway, so here are my thoughts on the war, and again, I think this is an interesting interview with Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk had a lot of interesting things to say in that interview. He also talked a lot about AI and stuff like that, so it's not just war. A lot of different topics were covered, and I'm thinking, you know, whether you agree with Elon on a lot of things or not, I think this is an interview worth watching either way, so it's something I would recommend. So yeah, take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Ciao.